According to the National Center for Drug Abuse, over 165 million Americans ages 12 and up are currently abusing drugs or alcohol. Of those 165 million Americans, there is a mom, dad, sister, brother, wife, husband, son, daughter, or grandparent praying and pleading that they would stop. Addiction is a subject most people don't like to talk about and is kept behind closed doors. But the Finding Hope podcast will bring light to the subject and give families that are living in shame, guilt, hopelessness, fear, worry, and anger tools and education to find strength, peace, happiness, joy, and hope. Hello, I'm Amy LaRue, Finding Hope Coordinator for Hope is Alive Ministries and your host for this Finding Hope podcast. At Hope is Alive, our mission is to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. We do this through our intentional next level sober living homes and faith-based support groups for the loved ones of addicts called Finding Hope.
Thank you for joining us today. I just want to remind you of our Finding Hope retreats are hitting the road this year. We recently returned from Tennessee and California, where we saw hope restored and community built. There are still opportunities to join us on our upcoming retreats in Nebraska, Texas, Florida, and a very special one just for wives in Oklahoma. For details and registration, you can go to fhretreat.com. But we also have our upcoming Run for Hope on September 6th. This is a meaningful event, a time to honor and remember those we have lost while we raise awareness and break the stigma around addiction. We would love for you to join us in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Weatherford, Oklahoma, or virtually. You can sign up, submit a photo in memory of a loved one, or volunteer at runforhoperace.com. But today, I'm super excited to welcome a very special guest to our podcast, Miss Amber Hollingsworth. And we were blessed in March to have her as one of our keynote speakers at the Hope Conference when we celebrated 10 years of Finding Hope. And I just continue to hear, just this last week, and continue to hear the impact that her talk had on everybody that was there. Many people are talking to other people, telling them, you got to check out Amber. You got to go to her podcast. You got to learn more from her. So I'm so excited to have you with us, Amber. So welcome to the Finding Hope podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you do a better job at introducing yourself. So go ahead and tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, after about 20 plus years of working in this field, working with people who have addictions, I now use all of that information to help people who have addicted loved ones understand what influence they have, how to help their loved ones either get out of denial or accept help, or through those early stages of the recovery process. And I mostly do that on YouTube these days.
And what's your YouTube channel?
A YouTube channel is called Put the Shovel Down, as in you hit your bottom when you put your shovel down, because we don't believe people have to keep going and hit bottom and lose everything. They can decide to take a turn anytime they want to.
Very good. And so you help people, you do the podcast. Are you doing counseling and all of that as well?
I do have a private practice, and we do coaching, both for people who have addictions and for their loved ones.
Oh, perfect. Well, let's just dive right in and get started. And so, like you said, you are very passionate about talking and encouraging and helping those, the family members, right? And you have said that the influence that family members have can on the recovery process. And so can you dive in a little bit more about how we as family members have an influence on our loved ones' recovery process?
Absolutely. You know, it's like so often people who have addicted loved ones, they just get told these statements. A lot of them are cliche about you have to wait till they hit bottom. They have to want it for themselves. You have to wait till they want it. And you basically get the message that you just need to step back and hope that they figure it out. And when this is your spouse or your child or your brother, sister, your parent, you know, that seems like an unreasonable request. It seems like there's got to be more that can be done. And my mission is to tell people there is a lot more that can be done. And the
Mhm.
reason I know that is because I've been helping people with addictions for more than 20 years now, almost all of which who came to see me didn't want to come see me, didn't think they needed to come see me. And I know firsthand that there are things you can do to influence people, to get people out of denial and ready to make some changes. And unfortunately, family members just they don't know that. They've tried everything they can think of. Nothing's worked so far. So when you hear that other advice, it seems true. But there are actually lots of things that can be done.
I, it's so true. Like they don't want to come see you. Like I felt that same way with my husband. It's like I've done everything. I've Googled, I've done all this research. Like, I don't want one more thing to have to do. But I was in like, I was so sick and just needed some type of support and guidance through it all that I needed it. Right. And so, what are some of those things that you might tell parents or spouses or grandparents? I think it's the whole family system, right? Everybody needs some sort of support and guidance. So what are some of those things you encourage families?
Well, it's a little bit of a process. And the first step is usually for most people, the first step is to get out of what I call the bad guy role. Because historically, when you have an addicted loved one, you're scared, you're
Mm-hmm.
desperate, you're panicked. You're watching them destroy their life, sometimes also destroying your life and other people's lives along with them. And it's quite natural to get in that desperate state. And so when you're in that fear based state, you do instinctively you do all the things. You beg, you threaten, you give ultimatums, you try to send them articles and give them evidence. You try everything you know to get through to them, just wanting them to see what the issue is and take action on it. And the more you do that, the more they resist you. and
Mm-hmm.
and the reason that is because it naturally provokes a defensiveness in people. It's like an instinct, and that's with all people. Even when we know we're in the wrong, if someone backs us into a corner, we naturally defend ourselves. Now, depending on someone's personality, they may get defensive outwardly and they're defensive. Some people are a little more conflict avoidant, so they may seem like they're not defensive on the outside, but I promise you, they are defensive on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you're trying to get someone to see something or do something, immediately their brain starts to think of all the reasons you're wrong and you're being critical and you don't know what you're talking about and you're just uptight and all these thoughts that they have. And that interferes with their ability to actually see the problem. They get distracted by being mad at you, basically. And then they
Mm.
just focus on that, which stands in their way and like impedes their ability to see what the issue is. So the first step is, and the most important step is, even if it's the only thing you do, is get out of the bag of roll. If that's the only thing you do, you have already increased the chances of your loved one getting better, like so much.
Well, I think sometimes you're talking about how they start to resist us, but we also start to build that resentment against them as
Oh yeah.
well. It goes both ways. It's like, come on, guys, like you're in that bad guy role, but like as they're building up that resentment towards you, you're building up that resentment towards them at the same time because they're not listening to you per se, right?
Oh yeah, the person with the struggling with an addiction problem usually feels unfairly judged. They feel like they're being criticized, like none of their good qualities ever count, and most of all, they feel like they're being controlled,
Mm.
and that makes them feel resentful and defensive. And the family member feels resentful and defensive because usually the family members having to take on way more than their fair share of responsibilities. They're taking care of things, they're handling things because when someone has an addiction, they start dropping balls. So the family member starts picking them all up. And so you're handling everything. And in your heart, you're just trying to help and you just love this person. And this person treats you like you're the bad guy. And that also makes you feel resentful. So you get this sort of back and forth power struggling type of dynamic that as long as that's going on, it creates distraction from the healing process.
So how do we take that step? Like I think we get comfortable in a sense in this cycle. It might not be a healthy cycle, but we get comfortable in it, right?
Mhm.
So how do we start to step out of that role as bad guy per se?
The hardest part about stepping out of the bad guy role is because of that fear that's driving you,
Mhm.
and you want them to hurry up and see this. And so what's happening is you're really just trying to rush the process, which in my experience dealing with people, who have addictions, even teenagers. Like there is a part of them inside that wants to change and knows they need to change. And as long as you're coming at them, they just focus on being mad at you. It's, my mom, my wife, my husband, whatever. And they're so focused on that they can't access that little voice inside that is talking to them about what the issue is. And almost everyone I've seen, no matter how outwardly they seem like, I love it, I'm never going to stop drinking, they can have the big talk, I call it. It's in there. And so once you can have faith and really know in your heart that it is in there, and even learn to catch little glimpses of being able to actually see it. I teach people how to see it. I call it change talk. Like, what are the signs that they actually do know there's an issue? Then you feel slightly more at ease to sort of back off. And then that second step is learning how to be a good listener, learning how to, and I actually teach people some kind of counseling techniques that aren't difficult at all, but the ones that we use to help get people out of denial and to start to see the problem and help move people towards change. So it's sort of backing up, letting them make some mistakes. So out of the bag I roll. And the other really important part of that formula is allowing the natural consequences. So this is where it's hard, because most families do the opposite. They want to fix all the messes that the person is making. They want to pay for the lawyers, they want to call the teacher and ask for extra credit, they want to do all the things. But inside the relationship, they're mad at this person. And that creates the wrong kind of picture of the problem, because what the person sees is, I'm fine, I'm still passing school, I'm still whatever, but my problem is you, because you're always on my case. And so that's what keeps them distracted with, their mind is on the wrong problem. And the reason I know this is because it's all they talk to me about. So for all these years, people are sending me their loved ones and want me to help with their addiction, but I can't get the person to talk about anything other than the loved one that usually sent them to me. And sometimes is paying, honestly. And so it's like, I feel bad. I'm like, oh gosh, you're paying me and to listen to your loved one gripe about you or whatever. And so it's like, they truly cannot see the problem as long as you're fixing their messes and being mad at them inside the relationship. You've got to reverse that strategy. You want to be empathetic, understanding. Now, that doesn't mean you let them run all over you and do whatever they want. I mean, you have to protect yourself. Obviously, that's there. But when you can be empathetic and let them create the messes, and if you get them to the point where they come to you and are able to say, really upset with myself, I can't believe I did that, and just start to talk with you openly and honestly, now you've got the ball moving in the right direction. Now you're actually helping to take those little seeds of motivation inside, and I call it grow those seeds. It's like you're watering those seeds, and knowing when you see them, what to say and what to do. Now you can move someone in a positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, like, I tell people all the time, like, God gave us ears for a reason, right? Too many times we just use our mouths, but we have to, like, learning how to be a good listener is hard, because too many times we do want to get in and fix the problem right away. And so, learning how to do that is difficult, because we're so used in this society, in our world, to just jump in and fix. Like, that's, for me, I'm a fixer. Like, I see that about myself, and I've had to learn, like, step back, like, not just with my addicted loved one, but with friends and family. It's like, okay, am I here? Are you talking to me as a, just so I can listen, or, what is this conversation for? Right.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So don't be the bad guy. Step out of that role, put on our listening ears, or learning how to be a good listener. What else can we do as a family member or friend?
Well, when you start to hear those little seeds of change talk, is what I call them, you can grow those seeds just by asking curious questions. So, like, for example, a lot of times after somebody does something they regret related to their addiction, they may, if they trust you enough and you're out of that bag of roll, they may actually say that to you. They may say, I'm really sorry. I know I said I would show up and I didn't. Or I know I drank too much last night and we were supposed to have our date. Or, they may acknowledge that to you. And your instinct might be to want to sort of jump on top of that. Yeah,
Mhm.
I told you you're going to do that. I knew that was going to happen. You always do that. You want to say all those natural things. And you can say them inside your own head if you want to. But outwardly, if you can use some empathetic statements, and then when they say things like, I'm not going to do that anymore, or from now on, I'm going to X, Y, or Z, or whatever. If you can just ask those are the seeds of change talk. Those are actually signs that your loved one is thinking about changing. Now, the key here is when you hear them, they may not be all the way what you want them to be. They may not be, I'm going to put it down forever. I'm never going to do it again. I'm going to go to a meeting every day for the rest of my life, get a sponsor, do all the things. That's what you want to hear.
Mhm.
But there's these little seeds that come before those big ones. And so when you hear those little ones, which might not be, I'm going to put it down forever, but I'm going to slow down. I'm going to back down. I'm going to do it less. I'm going to stop doing this, but I'm still going to do this. Or those are those little beginning seeds. And when you hear those, if you just ask a simple question like, that sounds really good. Have you tried that before? What's worked and what hasn't? Or you can say, um, what's make what's making you think you need to do that? And the reason that's a good question is when you ask someone what's making you think you need to do that, now you're getting someone to articulate to you out loud why they need to make a change. And this is what you want, because it's number one, it's getting them to think about it for themselves. But even when they say it out loud, it's like they're really reinforcing to themselves why they need to make a change. As opposed to when you're telling them they need to make a change, then they start to say out loud to you why you're wrong. And now they're reinforcing that to themselves. So you never want to put a person in a position to say or think or defend the opposite of what you want them to say or think or defend. So you want to make statements and ask questions in a certain way that actually makes them articulate the side that wants to change, because it's in there. Like, for example, people might say, I love it. I'm never going to stop doing it. Well, they may have all the big cowboy talk in the world. And then you can ask a simple question like saying something like, is there anything you don't like about it? And when you ask a question, someone's brain cannot help but to think of the answer. They just can't. It's just a reflex. And so immediately they're going to say, well, I don't like that I feel bad the next day. Well, I don't like that I'm putting on weight. Well, I don't like that it costs me so much money. They're going to think of something that they don't like about it. And just by asking that question, I promise you they're going to think of the answer. And they might even say the answer to you. So, and that's like double. That's like a double point there, because they're thinking it and they're saying it, which is reinforcing it to themselves. So asking questions in a certain way that pulls out the information that you want them to be thinking about, it's the key to moving them from one stage to the next stage.
Something my counselor has trained me is saying, what's the barrier even? Like, not instead of why are you not doing it? Well, what's the barrier behind this? And
Mm-hmm.
using that term a little bit different. And so I even think about that for myself too when I'm doing something like, what's my barrier? What's getting in my own way of doing
Mm-hmm.
something?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a so when this happens, I think many times we can see that it might be our loved ones when they talk. Sometimes it's that manipulation. So how do we know the difference between the manipulation and these seeds that are starting to sprout?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, Amy. Um, when they're genuine, they'll kind of surface on their own. When you back someone to a corner and it feels to them like they're just
Mm,
trying to find the right answer and you're trying to force them, then you don't really know whether they mean or they're just trying to say the right answer or say what they
mm,
think you want to hear. But when it surfaces on its own without any kind of defensiveness, without being backed into a corner, without being in trouble, you can be pretty sure that that's genuine. Like, for example, if I have a client that comes to my office and I say, have you been sober since the last time I saw you? They may say yes or no. And if they say, yes, I've been sober, that could be true, but it could not be true,
mhm,
because it could just be that they know that's the right answer. But if I'm talking to them and they're like, I have 26 days today, and they bring it up like spontaneously like that, it's almost always certain that they do, because when you are hiding something, you have a secret, you want to distance yourself from it. You want to stay away from
mm,
the topic as much as possible. You don't want to get near it. You're just sort of tiptoeing around it, trying not to, hoping it doesn't get brought up. And so when someone brings something like that to you, spontaneously, or even if you're having a conversation with someone about it, but they bring it up on their own, as in not like when you're saying, what are you going to do about this? Or, will you do this or will you do that? Then you may or may not be getting a truthful answer.
Yeah, that's good because it's so hard. And it's one of those, it's just the more you practice and the more you get in these conversations, because it's hard that this change on both sides is hard for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like stepping out and not asking all these questions we want to ask and letting them surface these seeds that have been hopefully being planted as we, shift out of the bad guy role and letting them come up. And we have to remember it's not going to be on our timing. Like
Right.
it's not going to happen right overnight. Right.
Right.
And so just we're faith-based organization is praying for God to have these seeds planted and for them to begin to sprout on his timing, and for
Mm-hmm.
us to be ready for when that happens
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to be ready for that conversation. So having these conversations, these seeds, asking these questions that you talked about, the that sounds nice. What's making you think that way? How else can families influence our loved ones?
Another really helpful thing to always keep your eye on is where your loved one is at in their stages of change. So like, it's not black and white and just sort of like,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm an alcoholic, or I don't think I'm an alcoholic, or I'm ready to change, or I'm not ready to change. There are all these little micro steps that happen in between. And so you need to figure out, is someone completely in denial, as in they don't think they have a problem? Oh, you guys are just crazy. What are y'all talking about? Like, I'm fine. Or is someone like, yeah, I have a problem, but it's not as bad as y'all are making it out to be? Or is someone like, yeah, I have a problem, but I can fix this myself? Or is someone like, yeah, I have a problem, I got to do something, like I need to go to treatment? There are all these different sort of variations and levels of denial in these stages of change. And you need to think about where I'm at right now and what's the next step. So, like, for example, if someone is completely in denial, like they don't think they have a problem, and you're talking to them about getting help, you're so missing the mark, and you're like destroying your own credibility, because they think you're crazy, because they're like, what are you talking about? And so then that means in their mind they just don't trust your judgment at all about anything related to this issue, especially, and maybe even other issues, but because they think you're overreacting. That a thing I hear oftentimes is, like, I'll hear people say, my wife her brother was an alcoholic, she thinks everyone's an alcoholic. That's the way they'll throw it in that sort of bucket, as a way of discrediting you, disqualifying what you have to say or what you think. And so you never want to start telling someone they need to get help when they don't even think they have a problem. So if you're in that, I don't think I have a problem, then all you're trying to do at that point is get them to see that they have a problem. And the best way to do that is to let the problems fall and you not be the problem. Make sure you're not the problem. And if it is an addiction, we call it in the addiction world unmanageability. The unmanageability will surface. I promise. It may not surface as fast as you want it to, but it will start to surface. It will start to cause issues with them. And all you have to do is sort of step back and let those things happen so that they can see this is a problem.
And what do you do in that family system where maybe the wife has stepped out or the mom, but then there's grandma over here
Oh
who's
my goodness.
still in it, the cycle,
Enabling or
yes,
doing all
like,
the things. Mm-hmm.
yes. How do you manage that?
That's a great question too, Amy, because it's so frustrating when you finally are like, okay, I get it, I'm doing all the things, it's working, and now someone else is stepping in and messing this up for me. And a lot of times it's another relative, or it's the person's best friend or their coworker, or sometimes if it's like a young person, it'll be the parent of one of their friends. They'll tell the other parents, my mom, my dad, they're just this, and the other parent will just jump in and say, yeah, you're not being treated right, you should come live here, or something ridiculous, and that make you so mad. It's really hard to like suppress that feeling. What you do in that point is you realize that if this other person has a lot of influence, like maybe they're enabling, or they're giving them money, or they're stopping all these natural consequences or something, what you have to do is you have to decide, okay, right now my job is to get this other person out of denial. And you do that the exact same way I'm telling you to work with your addicted loved one. You don't tell them the issue. So you take all these strategies, the same strategies I would teach you on how to get an addicted person out of denial, and you use those on that other person, the grandma, the brother, the sister, whoever it is, and you help them come out of denial. And that's so important because if you've got somebody else that's either jumping into the enabling role or jumping into the bad guy role, then even when you're doing the right things, they're interfering and slowing down the process. And so we need to get them on board. But
Yeah.
trying to say you're enabling them, you're this, you don't understand, they're really an addict, that's going to make them stay in denial even longer. It's the same process.
Yeah. And I mean, I talk to people like you're going to have boundaries with them too, with
Mm-hmm.
those other influencers. It might be where you just don't allow them to talk to you about your son or your daughter. Like, what's that boundary you need to have with that other person as you continue, this journey per
Mm-hmm.
se. And, like that influencer, we can't control, just like you said, we can't control those that are struggling with addiction as we can't control all the other influencers around us as
Right.
well.
But we can influence those other
Yes,
people.
we can influence. Yes,
We can
actually.
influence those other people. And you use the same techniques. When someone's in denial, these techniques I teach work for any issue where someone's in denial. Maybe it's your best friend, they're dating somebody that's not a great person and they're toxic or they're a bad influence and you want them to be out of denial. These same techniques work. So if the other person's in denial, the other thing that I think helps when someone else is stepping in there and enabling and that's really upsetting you is to realize that how long it took you to get out of denial.
Mm,
And
that's
you
good.
are probably the person close to the situation. So you're seeing it firsthand. So you're going to come at it faster. So have an empathy for that person who maybe still doesn't want it to be true. If you can find that in your heart and realize that you were probably there for years yourself and what it took for you to come to terms with it, then it might help you to have it in your heart to get into that place where you can actually influence the other person versus being mad at them or judging them or
When I
kind of,
think sometimes, like in my world, no one knew what was going on.
yeah,
And so, like, they might not have known until you were at that point. So you probably
yes,
put up walls or protection, masking, all of that. So they may not have seen it as long as you saw it because you were trying to hide it from everybody as well. So that's a good point. Like, how long had myself been in denial
right.
that, and just thinking about that other person, the other influencer in their
Right,
life.
and usually those other people aren't living with the person,
That's
and
true.
you're
Yeah.
usually living with the person, so you're seeing every single little thing, you have all the evidence. So not only do they don't have that front row seat and they're not seeing it, the other thing that complicates it is because you've probably been in the bad guy role, they're telling all the other people how mean you are to them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so this makes it even just that much more complicated because they're going, like, let's say this is your spouse is going to their parent and telling them how mean you're being, how controlling you're being, how critical you're being, how you're not supportive, all these things. And so not only do they not see the truth about what's going on with, like, let's say their son or daughter, but your addicted loved one has also set them up to see you as a villain. So when you start going to them harping on what the addicted person's doing wrong, you're validating to that person
Mm.
that what they're being told is true. Gosh, she is critical. Gosh, she is never happy. Gosh, she is overboard. She does over exaggerate. And so it's like now you're proving the case in the wrong direction.
That's good. I mean, I tell people all the time, nobody knew what was going on in our house. Like, I still don't know everything that happened, but I was right there in the thick of it, in the middle of that storm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, unless you're completely enthralled, like in it, you can't see everything. And like I said, I still don't know everything that went on, and I never will. And that's okay.
Right. And people can hold it together externally, like at work, with friendships, with family members they don't live with for a very long time. Like it's not until the very end stages that it becomes really evident to everyone what the issue is here. And it's usually either the spouse or the parent that sees it first.
Mm,
And your alarms are going off and you're screaming and you're begging for this person to see the problem and you're begging the people around this person to help you get this person to see the problem. And unfortunately, so often that works against you in all those different directions.
yeah, I can absolutely see that for sure. So, as we wrap up here in a little bit, is there anything else that families can do to influence their loved one?
Um, of course, what I've given you today is sort of the overview, and each one of those
Absolutely.
steps can be sort of broken down into tiny little skills you can develop. Like inside of our, we have a program called the Invisible Intervention, and it teaches you how to intervene with your loved one without one of those big episodes like on the TV show where everybody gets in the room and you confront them. And there's a time for that. I'm not totally against that, but there are some things that don't work well about that. And so it's called the invisible intervention because it's behind the scene. And we teach you all those little skills. Like, for example, one of those skills we teach people is called an accusations audit. And what this means is like when you are trying to get someone to hear something, some point of view that you have, and you know they're going to be against it, or they're going to think something, they're going to find a way to disqualify you. You say it first. So
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking, what are they going to accuse me of in their head? So you're auditing that, and
Mm-hmm.
then you say it first. So example, you start the conversation by saying, "I know sometimes I over worry about things. I know sometimes I can be really uptight. Oh my gosh, this is probably just my mom gene kicking in here, and I'm totally momming out on you. So, it's probably just that." But when you say it first, it takes their defensiveness. It's almost like takes the wind out of that sail. If you don't say it, it's all they can think, and they don't hear what comes next. You can say, "I know I probably over worry about these things because my brother's an alcoholic and I'm really sensitive to it." Because they're thinking it, like,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you go ahead and acknowledge those things, number one, you're showing humility, which makes the chances that they can show humility be a lot better because it's creating a safety, saying, "I'm not perfect either." But it's also just removing that thought that it's all they're going to be thinking about if you don't say it first. It's
Yeah.
accusation audit. Skills like that are just small little ways you can say things or ways you can ask a question that move the needle in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how, if they or if the listeners are interested in learning more about this invisible intervention or just getting in touch, how can they learn more from you?
I think the best place to start is just go into our YouTube channel. I mean, there's
Okay.
more than 1,000 videos there. They're all free, and that is a great place to start to figure out, where am I at in the stages of change here? What's my next move? And then if you want to get more into the nitty gritty, of course, we do have coaching and programs available. But I honestly encourage people just to start with YouTube because you can get really far just from that. Like sometimes you don't even need some of those other things. Like you can learn what you need to learn and get the ball moving.
Absolutely. And it's put the shovel down,
Put the shovel
correct?
down. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. And we will make sure we link that in our show notes for everybody so that they can get connected and go down the rabbit trail of it as well. So, and there are some great videos. I know we have many of our members that go and listen. And like I said, just this last weekend, I was in California for a retreat. And she's one of my leaders. We were having a discussion and she's like, "Well, Amber said." So, um, but it was good. Like it was good conversation that we could dig deeper into that, And so thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do for those that struggle with substances as well as their families. And so many times I say the families are the forgotten population and we don't realize we need the support, the encouragement. And so thank you for what you do and for being transparent out there with everything that you say. And so I like to leave our listeners with a challenge. I think it's so important that not only are we hearing, but we're applying and what's that next step we can take. And so I just listening to you, there's so much. Like I took a whole page of notes right here, and I'm sure people will stop and pause and take notes and all that. And I encourage you guys, if you're listening, if you're in your car, go back and go listen to this again when you can go take notes. But I think one of the things is I think we need challenge I want you guys to ask yourself is, am I in that bad guy role today? Where am I in this? If I'm in that bad guy role, what can be my next step? What do I
Mm-hmm.
need to do to step out of that bad guy role? Maybe I don't feel comfortable. So who can I call to talk to and work through this as well? We don't want you to do this alone. That's what finding hope in these communities are all about is staying connected and leaning on one another through those. And I think another thing that really spoke to me today, Amber, is influence.
Mm-hmm.
Is how are you being an influence? not just on your loved one, but on all those around you in your family system, in your friend system, in your circle. I think we have to remember our circles are small, but they also go out wide, and we can be an influence on that small circle as well as those larger circles as well. So, as you guys are listening to this, think through those two things this week, and but go back, listen, take the notes. Um, and get connected to a group in that community as well. Do you have
I
any last
also,
words? Yeah.
yeah, when you said that, it made me think. I actually have a 5-day No More Mr. Bad Guy challenge that you can sign up for free. And it's so simple. You just get a little email every day that says, do this today, say this words. And it's so simple. You're going to think, Amber, like, that's, that's so easy or whatever. But if you do this by the end of the week, you're going to notice. I'm not saying the end of the week your person is going to stop their addiction, but what I am saying is by the end of the week, you're going to notice a shift in your relationship with this person. Like they're going to be more open to you. The walls are going to come down. And I'll send you the link to that, Amy, so you can put it in the show notes if you want. So, because anybody can do that or access that. It's super easy. Tiny, tiny little things that make a big difference.
Well, I always encourage people practice in the mirror first too. Like
Mm-hmm.
practice with somebody safe, because when you're in that situation with your loved one, the more that you've practiced and prepared, I know it sounds weird to just stare at yourself in the mirror and practice. When before I speak anywhere, I practice in my car as I'm driving out loud, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I love that. But yes, we'll definitely thank you for sharing that with us, Amber. I'm anxious to learn more about that as well. Um, but guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. And you can learn more about Finding Hope at findinghope.today. But before you go, we would love for you to give us a 5-star review, share this on social media, and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss our next hope-filled episode. Thanks again for joining me, Amy LaRue, and our special guest, Amber Hollingsworth, in this episode of Finding Hope. And remember, you are not alone. It's not your fault. There is hope.